Nothing is funnier than seeing someone mess up. As humans, we experience great joy at seeing our peers make mistakes because it shows us that everyone is far from perfect. Today, we will be looking at 25 times animators made goofs in some of our favorite movies. Join us as we uncover the best of the best. Well, actually, the worst of the worst. Lilo and Stitch is a lovable tale about a little girl who goes to the pound to get a dog and ends up taking home the galaxy's most wanted extraterrestrial. Lilo teaches Stitch the meaning of family, and Stitch teaches Lilo the right way to play volleyball. It's almost the perfect movie, except for a few funny continuity errors that we spotted. In the film's opening scene, dancers sway to the beat of drums. When we first see the drummers, they're playing identical instruments. But the next time they appear on screen, one of the drums has completely changed. One of the things kids love most about Monsters, Inc. is seeing big scary monsters have total meltdowns when they see children.
No!
We think that one of the best scenes is when a monster is finishing up a day of hard work and gets caught with a child's sock on his back.
George Sanderson, please remain motionless. Repair.
When we first see the sock, the toe is pointing right, but when it's taken off of him, it's pointing left. Because we know for sure that nobody touched it to move it, it has to be a mistake that slipped past the animators. The Lion King is truly chock full of little mess-ups throughout the movie. The amount of whiskers the lions have constantly change. And apparently Nala's eye color switches depending on her mood, or more accurately depending on who is drawing her that day. One error that we found happens in the scene where Scar is gaslighting Simba into thinking that he is responsible for his father's death.
You wouldn't kill your old uncle.
I'm not like you.
At first, there are 7 lionesses that stand by the 2 lions, but then suddenly, one disappears. Honestly, pretty smart on her end, because as we know, things are about to get tense. Another big continuity error in The Lion King happens during the scene where Simba and Nala are trying to escape the hyenas. Nala is having a hard time scaling a bunch of elephant bone, so Simba tries to buy her a little time by clawing the female hyena, Shenzi, in the face. He leaves a pretty noticeable scratch that, dare we say, will scar if she doesn't take care of it. But somehow, when we see her next, it's totally healed.
That was it? Do it again.
Either she's a descendant of X-Men's Wolverine, or the animators just slipped up. Toy Story has a number of moments where objects seem to appear or disappear with no explanation. They're sometimes hard to catch, but once you start noticing, we swear you'll agree with us that what you find is more unfathomable than talking toys. During the scene where Andy's playing with Woody and Buzz and it's causing some unnecessary boy drama, there's a magic 8-ball on the desk that vanishes, then returns.
Excuse me.
That's really putting the magic in a magic 8-ball. It seems like they still haven't worked out all the kinks by Toy Story 2. The scene where Woody gets his boot painted over is chilling. Having your owner's name erased from must be total toy trauma. While this moment is heart-wrenching, we later see Woody scraping off the paint to reveal Andy once more. We have 2 observations. 1, the paint that the so-called expert toy cleaner used was wildly easy to get off, so we suggest he upgrade his materials, and more importantly 2, the A is at the tip of the boot when we first see it, and then when later Woody uncovers it, the A is at the bottom. The Incredibles is aptly named. In our opinion, it's the best portrayal of a man going through a midlife crisis out there. While almost flawless, there is one goof that we caught. During the scene where Mr. Incredible is off to save the day, he comes across an old lady who needs help getting her cat down from a tree. In the first shot, her back is to him, but somehow senses his oncoming car. After that, she's suddenly on the street. Maybe she's just a super as well. Maybe Wreck-It Ralph thought it was off the hook, but nope, we caught something that the team was probably hoping would slip by audience members.
Right. I'm sorry, you lost me there.
During the scene where Ralph and Vanellope are practicing driving, Vanellope loses one of her upper teeth. While she could have made $1 or $2 off the tooth fairy, depending on what her rates are like these days, the tooth suddenly reappears and remains firmly inside of Vanellope's mouth for the rest of the flick. That's one fast-growing incisor. In Shrek, when Fiona is totally destroying Robin Hood and his merry men, there's a brief animation slip-up. While you're probably like us and we're too busy recovering from seeing her kick 2 men in the face at the same time, we should have been looking closer at Shrek. When he walks through the frame congratulating her, he looks his normal ogre self. But as she points out later, he has an arrow sticking out of his rear end that we would have definitely seen in the previous shot. We'll let this one slide, because our biggest takeaway is this very informative defensive tutorial for women being accosted in the woods. Before we can move on, we do have one more bone to pick with Shrek. When Lord Farquaad goes searching for some lucky lady to make his queen, he's given 3 options: Cinderella, Snow White, or Princess Fiona. What we don't understand is that he is told he must marry a princess in order to become king. But that means Cinderella shouldn't be in the mix.
You're not a king yet, but you can become one. All you have to do is marry a princess.
She, after all, only became royal when she married a prince, so it was a good thing he didn't pick her to court. Although, Fiona wasn't a slam dunk either. Honestly, they've all got their own baggage. Probably one of the saddest scenes in Zootopia is when Judy heats up a dinner called Carrots for One. When we see her through the microwave, she's wearing a pink shirt. But when she unveils her unappetizing dish, she's wearing her uniform again. Another small detail from this scene that we picked up on is that is during the same moment when she peels back the lid. There is no phone to her right, but when they cut away, her phone is there. Another scene in Zootopia that we're scratching our heads at is when Judy gives her performance at the Carrot Days Festival. She is truly a dream child, dressed up in her uniform and saying that in Zootopia, anyone can be anything. Up to this point, everything is normal, but after this performance ends, she says thank you and good night.
Thank you and good night.
She skips then out of the barn with her parents, and it is clearly in the middle of the day. Is this a case of kids saying the darndest things, or did the animators really flub this up? In Beauty and the Beast, the character LeFou should be awarded some sort of medal for being the best hype man around to the worst man imaginable. He stands by Gaston's side and literally sings his praises when his friend is busy flaunting his misogyny and toxic masculinity. It is when LeFou gives Gaston a pump-up speech in the form of a song that we noticed something a little fishy going on. There is a bear rug that sits by the fire minding its own business, but moments later it's under Gaston's seat. Looks like there is still some life in the old boy yet. Back in the day, Disney films were hand-drawn. While it might seem hard to imagine, there were around 12 drawings per second of film. That comes out to 720 frames per minute. As you can imagine, that meant the stakes were a lot higher for screw-ups. In Bambi, during the scene where the forest is on fire and all the animals are collecting their children, we found a pretty obvious oversight. As we see here, a mother raccoon cleans her baby, but then it suddenly vanishes and teleports. We're just happy this little time traveler still has his mom. One of the best subplots of all time is the saber-toothed squirrel Scrats in Ice Age. This resilient little rodent will do just about anything to protect his acorn. He is so adoring, attentive, and affectionate, we'll go as far as to say it's the greatest love affair of the Pleistocene epoch. In the scene where Scrat is trying to escape 2 icebergs closing in on him, we see that he uses the acorn as a pseudo-sled to get to the opening in time. What doesn't make sense is that in the next cut, we see him being fired out of the top of the 2 icebergs. Tangled was the Rapunzel movie we were all waiting for. It took a whopping $260 million to make, rendering it one of the most expensive films of all time. With cash like that, you'd think there would be a team of people on the prowl looking for continuity errors, right? You would think that there would be little to no mistakes, right? Wrong! Our favorite goof was during the scene where the thug plays piano and visibly knocks off all the keys. Miraculously, he continues playing and even does a slide where we can hear every note. Gotcha! In Frozen, when Anna falls for Hans of the Southern Isles, aka the prince with the big sideburns, she quickly professes her infatuation through song. During the ballad Love is an Open Door, Anna and Hans prance around, practically chasing each other like school children. There's a moment where the two are dancing in front of a lighthouse and their shadows are cast onto the adjacent wall. What's strange is that they appear to be floating. Maybe it's a metaphor for their relationship not being on solid ground. Are we just reading too much into this? Another thing we caught in Frozen is during the scene where Marshmallow is brought to life. This cuddly little 20-foot snowman picks up Anna, Kristoff, and Olaf, then unceremoniously tosses them outside. When Anna and Kristoff are thrown down the icy stairs, we noticed that Anna is without her winter hat. But when they brush themselves off, Anna has her hat again, which is definitely a good thing, because as we know, they have a whole lot more running to do. The Little Mermaid is a tale that teaches young women that it's totally okay and normal to abandon your entire life just because you see some hot guy once. Ariel gives up her family, her home, and oh yeah, her legs are her tail, I guess, and voice just so she can hang with a guy she's never even talked to. In the scene where Ariel's dad, King Triton, finds out about her fascination with Eric, he tries to teach her a lesson by destroying her shrine dedicated to him and all things human. We see Triton blast the statue of Eric and obliterate it completely. Even though it was totally destroyed, somehow the face of the statue magically remains intact for Ariel to pine after. Cinderella is another example of a story that should be updated for young viewers. The fact that she needs a man to save her from her situation has us shaking our heads. At the end of the film, when she's whisked away by her prince, we see a grand wedding complete with birds carrying her veil. She's sporting a beautiful wedding dress with long sleeves, not unlike Kate Middleton's dress. But when she's on the carriage, she has a totally new look. Our theory is that she's either a quick change artist or she simply couldn't handle those sleeves and tore them right off in a moment of off-screen rage. Mulan is a sweet role model for young women. She totally smashes the patriarchy by defying gender norms and fighting for her family. While she tries to fit into her society by attending a matchmaking ceremony, everything goes comically wrong. During this scene, the matchmaker falls into the fire, and Mulan tries to help but makes matters worse by throwing tea in the woman's face. What we're wondering is, if the fire was on her backside, how did she put it out by throwing it on her front? Inside Out takes us into the mind of a young girl who is just trying to survive being a preteen. During the dream productions scene where Riley's dreams are being created for her, Joy bursts onto screen as a dog in an attempt to jolt Riley awake. What we spotted happens beside the camera. So, how there is someone holding up prompts? When it cuts back, that guy is gone and suddenly replaced by the director. Explain that, Pixar. Anyone who saw Sing could have easily identified Seth MacFarlane's voice performance as the mouse Mike. His character was full-on arrogant and not afraid to stand up to anyone bigger than him, which includes most of the animal population. During the scene when Mike berates a monkey for not giving him enough money for busking, we spotted something off. When he first grabs the monkey, he is hanging onto the collar of his yellow shirt, but when the camera changes angles, he's moved to his sweater vest. In the beginning of Moana, there is a scene where the kids are listening Moana's grandmother tell ancient stories of their land. Baby Moana stares in wonder, and the other kids freak out when it gets too scary. Surrounding the children are tapestries that have depict different paintings. Pay close attention to the one next to Maui. When we first see it, it looks like this, and then the next time we see it, it's completely different. What's with the quick redecorating job, Disney? In Aladdin, Princess Jasmine has a fabulous sidekick named Raja, who sticks by her side in thick and thin. When the Sultan is trying to set Jasmine up with a prince, Raja responds by tearing part of his clothing off. As the prince leaves, it looks as though Raja ripped his pants. But when we see Raja, she has some of his heart-patterned underwear in her mouth, meaning he should have been more compromised than we saw him. We hoped you enjoyed these goofs as much as we did. Were you watching an animated movie recently and noticed something out of place? Let us know in the comments below. As always, we are dying to know who's slipping up. Thank you for watching, and be sure to smash that subscribe button on your way out. See you next time.